Channel 24, your trusted media source for news and information. This week on Opinion Street,
the public has every right to know who is trying to influence public policy.
They are taking a stand on positive things, and I don't think it's going to hurt.
Our young people, there's more to life than just basketball and football.
How many times do you see a high school principal that's a woman?
Hi, I'm John Curtis, and welcome to Opinion Street. This week we have a full agenda as we discuss the future plans for the Naval Training Center in Orlando, the economic impact of the Orlando Magic, and the definition of minority at Walt Disney World. But to start things off, let's turn our attention to politics. The United States Congress just adjourned with little legislation and a lot of filibustering. As a result, we're left with no federal lobbyist disclosure law. A revision to Superfund legislation was also filibustered. What will that mean to the people of Bithlo who have a water contamination problem to take care of? What other pork projects did Central Florida lose or gain as a result of election year politics? Let's join our panel as they discover that pigs, or rather pork, does fly. Dick, it would seem if I were in your position as a political consultant or as that lobbyist that more and more these days the heat seems to be not only on elected officials but those who are paid to influence them. What do you think about what's happening with the lobbyist legislation, not only in Washington but here in Orange County?
Well, first of all, in Washington, I'm very disappointed that the legislation did not pass. I think it would have been great to have
Is that the Republicans' fault, I believe that was?
Well, my opinion is the Republicans' fault, and we worked on it for many, many years, and Newt Gingrich and Bob Dole was not about to let anything pass for which President Clinton might get any credit. That's why they killed GATT legislation, and that's why they killed the whole Superfund legislation, in my personal opinion. But at the local level, at least the county commission is moving towards drafting an ordinance that will require lobbyists to register and disclose. I wrote the first law in Florida in 1978 to require that, and now that I'm on the other side of the process, actually lobbying government officials, someone recently asked me, well, haven't you changed your mind now? And absolutely not. It's confirmed my suspicions all along. Lobbyists should have unfettered access to the process, but the public, the basic thesis here is that the public has every right to know who is trying to influence public policy. And
that's what this legislation would do.
In the proposed ordinance, all it would require one to do is if you're a paid lobbyist, you would register your name and your address and list who your clients are, and that's all you have to do. The burden is put on the lobbyist. It's not put on the elected officials. I think Linda Chapin has a very good idea in moving towards this, and it's very workable, and I think it suits the public interest very well. I hope it passes.
Hey, Mark, please.
Well, I disagree for a couple of reasons. It's a great idea, but it falls far short of what it's supposed to do. For example, some of this legislation would require you to, you couldn't buy a hamburger for someone, but you could give them money.
And Mark, is it the federal level or the county level?
I'm talking about at the federal level. I'm concerning, and talked to a couple of people in Washington about this yesterday. And the other thing is that on one side they say, well, whoever the lobbyist is, they'll be known, but the person who was pitched won't be known. Plus, it also hurts people at the grassroots level, right back down to the county and the local level. So it started off as a great idea, but it falls far short, and that's why Republicans voted against it.
Interesting. Well, Stella, you're shaking your head over here. Dick wants to say something, but yes.
Well, Mark was talking about the grassroots level, and I think from that standpoint, he's absolutely right. As it relates to lobbyists, a lot of the grassroots people really are not familiar with the process overall. And so because of this, I think they need to disclose more. I think they need to make it more obvious to the everyday public what they're doing, whose side they're on, what their job responsibilities are, and the kind of influence that they might have on our government officials.
Interesting, Jane. I'm curious from your perspective. Dick says it was good legislation. It was vetoed, if you will, or shut down or filibustered by the Republicans. Mark says it wasn't a good piece of legislation, and therefore they voted it down. What are your thoughts?
I think maybe it's just too broad to suit to suit some people, because the old problem of enforcement is probably going to be what comes back to get them. You can write the rules. Certain people will subscribe to the rules, and there are always going to be those who won't subscribe to the rules. It's been that way forever, and that's not going to change.
Well, I'm curious here in Orange County specifically, because I know I'm at home watching the show. I'm skeptical, if not cynical, as a resident of the community, as just a citizen in general, about lobbyists. We always seem to hear about high-paid lobbyists influence, but what good do lobbyists do? Can we talk about some of the positive influence and the impact that lobbyists have, if you will, please?
Well, I truly sit on both sides of this fence, because I am on, like I'm on the Tourist Development Council, for example. I get lobbied on a regular basis for that funding.
And how does that happen? Just give us a little insight. What happens when you are being lobbied?
Well, most of the people who end up lobbying me are people I know already, who are very open and say, I need to talk to you about this. I've got to tell you our side of the deal, and I want you to listen.
So they call you on the phone or take you aside somewhere?
They'll call me on the phone, and generally it's over the phone, and I'm interested in the research. It's not unlike preparing for this program. I need the background information. I want their perspective. I don't think I'm unlike an elected official in that capacity. So you listen, you analyze for yourself, you do your own research, you go for a second opinion, you try and corroborate that or refute it as it falls out, and then you vote. At the end of the day, you vote for what you believe is the right thing to do. Now, I just don't think there's such a thing out there as being bought by a lobbyist, because at least for our, let me speak for our local county commission here, there's nothing that anybody could give you that would make it worth your while to jeopardize your whole career on these issues. I think some people have better access than others.
Dick is shaking his head.
Dick is shaking his head. Okay, I sound kind of Pollyanna-ish here, but I'm telling you that there's too much at risk.
I mean, two quick things. First of all, the reason, the proposed ordinance, all it requires, again, is anyone who's paid to lobby, paid to influence public policy, should be registered. A simple registration. There's no burden on the county at all. Secondly, we need to go back to the time when we had people walking the halls en masse, myself included, to influence who would be chosen to build the county courthouse, a $120 million project. Very important project. The bond selection process, when there were more people, it was like an anthill in the county administration building. I was also on one of the teams. All I'm saying is that the public needs to know who Dick Batchelor represents in that process and that decision making. It's not a burdensome. And as far as the federal legislation goes, Ross Perot and the fringe right got on the phone and beat up Newt Gingrich and these guys and killed the bill. It has no effect on grassroots lobbyists whatsoever. It's professional lobbyists. We want to know who gets paid millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in Washington influence legislation. Ross Perot put a squelch in that, which is an irony because he's always said we should have lobby registration open government. Of course, my opinion is Ross Perot really is the crazy ant in the attic. He just dressed differently today.
But Mark is over here fidgeting. I'm looking at the Congress in general, and I heard you say earlier this piece of legislation was filibustered and ultimately vetoed because the Republicans thought it was flawed. How about the Superfund legislation that also got filibustered and the impact right down the road from this station, and that's the water problem in Bithlo? What was wrong with that piece of legislation?
Well, it comes at a time in which a lot of people were unsure as to whether that was actually going to help Bithlo. And there's a lot of truth in what Dick says, but I think that to get right down to it, when you get to the grassroots level, it was said before, a lot of people are not aware of the process. They are intimidated by what they have to go through, and this legislation put more roadblocks in front of it, and I think a lot of people who deserve to be heard wouldn't be heard. Bithlo is a situation where it's right before the election. I think a lot of people were nervous about whether or not they were doing the right thing.
Stella, please.
Just piggybacking on what Mark said as it relates to Bithlo, I really don't think the people in Bithlo understands the process. And as it relates to that, I don't think they're going to benefit by any of this. I really don't think so. It is an election year, and there might be some skepticism there, but I just don't think they're going to benefit by it at all.
Interesting. Jane, let me come back to you on this whole issue. You make your living, among other things, representing certain individual interests to certain elected officials. And I'm wondering if, from your perspective, you've seen it change over the years that you've been doing that, as far as attitudes of those folks that you're meant to influence, or the approach that those folks that you work for are actually taking.
I will tell you a shift in the industry that I see and that I currently subscribe to, which is I don't do any lobbying. I I do the research, I tell the clients what needs to be said and to whom, and I send them off to do it. It's much more effective for my clients, and the elected officials certainly appreciate it. They like to cut out the middleman whenever they can. Dick will agree with that, I'm
Let's
sure.
not do that. You're going from preaching to meddling now. Let's not.
We've gone from preaching to coaching.
Coaching, is that what it is?
Yes.
And Dick, I'm curious, you live that daily, you know, for those of us here and those at home, frankly, what's it like really doing what you do?
About 25% of what I do is lobbying. I also do a lot of public relations and business development things, but it's not a very difficult thing. I mean, you basically have a client who has an interest before the county or the city or in Tallahassee and Washington. You try to understand it, and you set up meetings and go talk to those people who can help make the decision. It's an easy process.
Let me ask kind of a final note from your two perspectives, but also from everybody. What are some groups that also have lobbyists that most of us, if we heard that, would go, oh, well, that's a good thing? What are some of the positive forces out there? Mark, you know some of
The
those?
Chamber of Commerce,
The
right in our
Chamber,
area,
right.
has, and here too as well, has their own lobbyist in Tallahassee.
Okay. Sure.
And it's important. It's
Okay.
important for the people in the
The
business.
school board.
The school board's got one. Let's name off some other ones very
League of
quickly.
Women
League of
Voters.
League of Women Voters. Who else?
Sierra Club.
Sierra Club.
Sierra Club.
Audubon Society.
Audubon
National Rifle
Society.
Association.
Right,
Yes,
National
all
Rifle
of them.
Association. Stella, anything you can think of right now?
No.
Automobile dealers.
Automobile dealers, all right. So again, the point is for all of us that we need to be better informed about the process, like you say, and there are many different lobbyists, if you will, out there representing many different interests. It's not all money under the table and all of those kind of, I think, the way it's portrayed in Washington anyway. And on that note, we'll have to stay tuned and see how things go with this piece of legislation next year, and stay tuned for the local story here in Orange County. Thank you.
As the Naval Training Center in Orlando prepares to close its gates, its future use is being divided among many deserving groups. But the decision makers are not always local officials, at least until the McKinney Act was amended by Central Florida's congressional delegation in response to Winter Park and Orlando neighborhood complaints. It's all about process, and it's time to hear some back talk.
I would characterize a lot of the meetings that we were just, poor behavior. And that's unfortunate when you're discussing a community issue as important as this one is that you want to do it from an open discussion viewpoint and not from a narrow-minded. I think that over time that people started looking at it more from a rational standpoint, but you still continue to have a lot of catcalling and personal attacks and saying, I don't want anybody, please ship them out of the area, which are not rational and not community-minded.
Well, be it rational or irrational, it's the people's point of view, and I think it's important that we all hear it. Whether we like it or agree with it or not, people want to talk. There's a process here that gave them that opportunity, and it may make you uncomfortable, you may not like it, but that's what you're dealing with. That's the facts. We all walked into it with an understanding that, legally speaking, we did not have the ability to say to the Federal Department of Health and Human Services, we don't want them there, and get them out, and it meant anything. It didn't mean anything to them. The amendments, of course, take it away from them and put it back here in the community. However, I think the city and the Reuse Commission were dealing with the coalition already, and I think from the standpoint of the coalition having to hear what the neighbors had to say, and the city officials and Reuse Commission officials and staff hearing what the neighbors had to say, it had to have an effect on them. And so I think from the standpoint of that process being there to have that input come in, it worked very well. That's my impression anyway.
Yeah, it's important to know that the coalition from the outset, we actually sought input. We're actually the ones who contacted the Reuse Commission and contacted the mayor's office and said, we want community input on this issue, even though the law is on our side and we don't have to go to the public hearings and take public comment and take some of the pointed words.
People can make a difference, and if they come out and they do speak up, I think that the politicians will listen to them. But I think that a lot of people don't think that they will be heard, and it takes some momentum to get past the cynicism. But if you get enough people out, and enough people calling and enough people writing letters that you can do it. That's it. That's the bottom line.
I agree with that very strongly, and you got to remember this is a developmental process. It's probably bigger than any development or regional impact this area has ever gone through, except maybe for Disney. There's a lot of points yet to be covered, and James is right. There's a lot of cynicism out there. We've heard it many times at our meetings that, you know, you guys are just going to go do what you're going to do, and you don't care about what we think. Well, I think the process so far has shown that the politicians and decision makers do care about what they think, and they do listen.
We'll do it again.
We're going to do it again. We have to do it again because we've got a lot of other issues that we have to address.
Yeah.
Traffic, you know, impacts, density of development here. I mean, and James and I are already talking about those things, and the neighbors are already talking about them too. From the standpoint of providing an initial hot point to coalesce around, they did us a real favor. The coalition did us a favor.
The homeless issue was just a precursor to the real issues of traffic and development of this 800-acre site. It was just the warm-up, so the spring training.
If that was spring training, I hate to see the World Series.
As you've just heard, the McKinney Act was amended to provide more local involvement on the future use of the Naval Training Facility in Orlando. An economic impact report about the Orlando made the front page of the Orlando Sentinel as a news story. And Walt Disney World is unsure if white women are classified as minorities. More opinion in your way.
Jane, if I got my facts correct, you said on the show once before that you could hear the guns at the Naval Training Center graduation ceremony in your neighborhood. You're that close to NTC. The guns are going quiet, but there's been some new battles brewing at NTC Orlando.
We can still hear the music every day. We can hear reveille every morning when I go out to get the paper. Yes, there's brouhaha brewing in the 3 neighborhoods that surround the base there, which is Timberlane Shores, Quail Hollow, and Waterbridge.
And you're in Quail Hollow?
I'm in Quail Hollow.
Okay.
Yes, so they're getting an organized effort to generally protest whatever's going on. I have a little bit of a handicap because I've done more research than most people. I actually went out and spent a week at Lowry Air Force Base in Denver. That is about 18 months ahead of NTC Orlando in terms of closing down. Similarly, though, they've gone through a lot of the same, they have the same components. They have a golf course, they have some higher-end residential surrounding their community on one side and some lower-end residential surrounding their base on the other side. So there are a lot of similarities.
Any attempt to put the homeless, if you will, at that Lowry Air Force Base?
Well, no, the McKinney Act, at the time I was out there, the McKinney Act was just being discussed. But I will tell you, interestingly, here in Orlando at the time I was visiting, the big concern was a federal penitentiary because we have a golf course and good weather, and it would be a wonderful minimum security federal penitentiary. Well, I will tell you that the folks I met with at Lowry told me that that was the best thing that we could get in a reuse program because it has permanent, eternal employment, and that it would be a wonderful thing to have in your neighborhood. And the McKinney Act just caused a lot of people to think, oh gosh, the homeless, by comparison,
only right.
The homeless issue looked bad.
Stella, I'm curious, do you turn NTC into a recreational center with parks and softball complexes, or do you use it for economic development? That seems to be part of the struggle in this process here with the McKinney Act being kind of the foundation of all of it.
Well, I think the park and the recreation is nice, and I think Orange County, as well as the city of Orlando, have done an excellent job in refurbing some of the recreational areas, and we have a lot going on as it relates to basketball and football and things of that nature. So I would basically be interested in the economic piece of it, because I think with the base closing, that part of it is going to be impacted tremendously. So I really think they need to look at something whereby economics will play an important role.
Okay. And I'm curious, Dick, from your perspective, how the process occurred. You know, for a while, Michael Poole and the Coalition for the Homeless seemed set on being at NTC, and now we've seen that shift, and what your thoughts are about the process and how that decision was made.
Actually, from the top level down, I think there's been tremendous cooperation with the whole base closure and military, realignment, if it were. The process has worked. I talked to Herb Smethern from the city just a couple of days ago, and he's very happy with the relationship he has with the Department of Defense and Department of Commerce, and they're working with Department of Environmental Protection, EPA, on the cleanup and all. So the process seems to work very well. And with this new amendment on the McKinley Act provisions, where the local government can now have last say as to what will go on that base, as regard homeless shelters in particular, I think everybody has won on that. The neighbors seem to be satisfied The mayor, it is my understanding, has been reported that she has made a commitment to the Coalition for the Homeless to find another site in Orlando, knowing the mayor and her commitment that will come to fruition, and she will get behind it, and I'm sure even financially try to find financial help to make it happen. But as a final note, I really have to applaud Michael Poole. I mean, he is really a rarity in any community, in particular this community, to come out of the private sector and to do what he's done under the auspices of the Coalition for the Homeless. He's done a marvelous job as it relates to the base closure specifically. He leveraged his negotiating position very, very well. He was very well received, very well respected, and in the end, the ultimate goal for Michael is to have a shelter for the homeless and provide all of those support services, and he will have that because he's done such a marvelous job in working through the process. Again, the process does work, and it did work for Orlando.
And in this case, maybe your neighborhood will be quiet for a little while longer anyway,
For a little
Jane.
while
But,
longer.
you know, in another area where things have really kind of got noisy recently, and that's the Orlando Magic. And from someone over in Volusia County looking in, I don't know if you saw the story on the Orlando Sentinel front page about the economic impact of the Magic. Mark?
A big story, lots of figures, and then nobody challenged it. And who put it out? And then we find out more about the Magic. The Magic wants to expand, and we know that. It's been a successful franchise since it's got here. They make a lot of money. They work well. They built an arena that was too small. They want to put an extra layer of luxury boxes, but they're having some problems with the ones that they have. The Magic bought up some real estate right next door to where they play. They have made good use of what they have. The Magic are going to be big players in this community for some time. And they were behind that story. And I think a lot of people thought, well, does this set the table for baseball? I'm afraid baseball won't be here. A lot of people would like it, but I don't see it coming here.
Stella, you're smiling about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I would agree with Mark on that point. However, with the Magic team, I mean, they've been great in our community, and they've brought a lot of economics to our community. However, I really haven't seen them really out that much in the grassroots community as it relates to our young people. That seems to be my pet project. Our young people, there's more to life than just basketball and football, and we have to do something more in terms of educational things, do something with computers, have them understand that there's other kind of professions out there. So in addition to the basketball and the football, I think Magic and the people that are organizing things for the community needs to branch out and do something more on the educational basis.
Well,
Jane, go ahead, please.
I have to defend these guys just for a second here because they have a fabulous foundation. The Orlando Magic Youth Foundation has been in place since the day the Magic opened in January of '89. Or 88, I guess, and they give back to the community in much the way that Disney does and doesn't get credit for it. They do it quietly, they do it effectively, they do it where it counts. So I really think that maybe that's just being overlooked because of the glitter and the glamour of Penny Hardaway's salary.
I don't think it's being overlooked at all. I'm speaking from hands-on information. I'm in the community and I see it going on, and it's not as people think it is. And so I'm just saying they need to maybe re-emphasize what they're doing. More people need to be aware of what they're doing on the grassroots level.
Okay. As an astute observer of politics in Central Florida, Jane, I'm curious about, as you saw that story on the front page of the Sentinel, whether it was just a slow news day and they didn't have anything else to put on the front page, or were there implications around baseball? What do you think?
Well, I'm going to depart a little bit from what I usually say about the Orlando Sentinel. I think the Sentinel does a nice job now of where it used to be that they were so bent on just providing the news, and they felt like they had to dig and dig and dig to find a negative slant to everything to make it fair. And now, especially with the Magic, I'm sorry they do it more with the Magic than they do with other things, but beginning with the Magic. But
on the front page.
On the front page. But to include such programs as the Healthy Communities effort that's underway now, they are taking a stand on positive things, and I don't think it's going to hurt.
All right. Dick, please.
My problem, and it's not a problem, obviously the story was a good story, they did their own research, it's fine. I think it's more the publisher of the paper advancing the success of the Magic to try to trailblaze, to try to get community support for baseball. And baseball doesn't bring any room nights here. No one comes and stays overnight for a baseball game, number one, so I don't think the economics are the same. Secondly, if you're going to sell baseball in the $175 million stadium on raw economics, then show me the empirical data. I'm a little bit concerned about when they try to make it a community redevelopment exercise. We're going to redevelop the Orange Blossom Trail area. My response to that is, you've got very smart, ordinarily white rich men who find out a way to get somebody to pay $175 million. If I came to you and says, you come to my town, I'm going to pay $175 million, build your manufacturing plant, fully equip it, do the infrastructure, and give you the key, you just come.
Pretty clever, aren't they?
And if you're going to do it under the guise of economic development or redevelopment of a blighted area, take the $175 million, put it in a foundation, endow it, take the interest from the endowment, protect the principal. And you know how many minority scholarships I can buy with $175 million endowed? A lot. So if they're really serious about it and they want to do it, the next team that comes in here should set aside a substantial portion of money so we can actually audit trail the improvement to the impoverished area, not just reserving my front yard for $4 a night parking when you've got a game and giving some of my neighbors jobs selling peanuts and hot dogs. That is not community redevelopment. We've been misled on that, and we need a hard bargain when the next ball team comes in here. When the multi-millionaires can come in this town and walk away with more millions, they've got to leave something definitive behind, and that's the way it should be done.
Yeah. On this theme of economic development, and in particular for minorities, I can't help but turn to you, Stella, on the recent story also in the Orlando Sentinel about minority contracts at Walt Disney World.
Yes. Specifically, the one that the paper referred to was the Coronado Hotel and Resort. And most recently, they've awarded the contract to Syntex Rooney and Slash Construct 2. They came out with a program a week or so ago to implement their program and to let people know what it was all about. And the majority of the program was set for minorities. They have set aside...
minorities, do these include white women? And I think that seems to be at the crux of the issue here.
Correct. No, it does not include white women.
So are we saying white women are no longer minorities?
Well, that has been a toss-up question for a very long time. Some of us think that they are, and some think that they're not. Where Disney is concerned, however, they have always had the door open for white females. So they weren't considered as minorities, whereby minorities, black, Hispanics, Asians, and the like, have always been left out of the loop. So this was their intention to get more participation from the minorities, not to leave the white female out, but to get more participation.
Dick, did I hear you grunt over here when she said something a minute ago? Or was that you, Jane?
It wasn't me.
Are white women minorities or aren't they? This is a really hot issue. Obviously, Disney is just one example, kind of the lightning rod for this story, but
I'll defer to my expert witness here.
As a white woman, are you?
As a white female business person?
I am a registered WBE with the City of Orlando,
And
which
WB means?
Women-Owned Business Enterprise.
Right.
And it has a reciprocal relationship with Orange County so that you don't have to register in the county and register with the city, and they recognize that. GOA has a similar program, the Expressway Authority. I am registered. I can tell you here on a stack of Bibles that I have never gotten any business because of that. I went through the process to really understand more about the process because I was very skeptical early on, because my problem with it is that they don't really enforce the quality of the product you deliver. They're more hung up on the color of your
Quotas
skin or your ethnic origin than they are about what you're delivering as a service. I don't think women should be a protected class. White women should be a protected class. I think that the emphasis should be shifted to the quality of the work provided.
Interesting. And the final 30 seconds, Mark.
Exactly. That's the way I feel. When I hear that white women is a minority, I went, what? What's next?
I'd agree with you, right, Dick?
It
White women is
depends.
minority?
It depends, though, on what we're talking about. If we're talking about certain types of business with women being put into key management positions, they're not represented in a lot of areas, in a lot of industries. You can get right to education. How many times do you see a high school principal that's a woman? When you're getting into business, the same way. Disney has always opened its doors to women. They've put them in key positions, and I don't think they've shut their doors to them. But classifying them, I'm a little scared of that.
Thank you.
If you'd like to share your opinions, write us at Opinion Street, 11,510 East Colonial Drive, Orlando, 32817. Or use the Opinion Street fax line at 273-1519. Thanks for joining us, and see you next week. But until then, remember, look both ways before you cross Opinion Street.